What's going on, housemates? Marcelo here, and I'm recording this video on Friday afternoon, shortly after Mikel Arteta held his press conference ahead of Arsenal's visit to Chelsea on Sunday at Stamford Bridge. Now, this video is going to be talking only briefly about the press conference because there wasn't really anything that groundbreaking or insightful. We know Mikel Arteta likes to keep his cards close, doesn't reveal too much in his press conferences. But then I'm going to primarily be reviewing a few comments that were left on the full-time post after our loss to Inter Milan by our housemates on Instagram and just discussing my thoughts about those comments. I want to start doing that more because as the YouTube channel slowly grows, of course, we're getting plenty of thoughts from our housemates on Instagram, which is where where Wenger's House primarily exists. So yeah, I want that to become more of a regular occurrence. So definitely feel free to be getting involved and engaged on the Instagram page, but also, of course, as the YouTube channel grows here as well, leave comments in the comment section here. So very briefly, the only real talking point from the press conference was, Mikel Arteta was asked about Declan Rice's situation. It's been reported that he has broken a toe or he has a fractured toe. And so Mikel Arteta, of course, wasn't going to explicitly confirm or deny this. He said he's, leaving it up to the doctors. But we can assume based on, reliable reports that Declan Rice does have a fractured toe. And so the question is, do we risk him further injuring his toe and his foot by starting him on Sunday? I don't think it's worth it just because, yes, we have an international break coming up after the Chelsea game, but, something like a toe is a very delicate injury, especially, of course, when you think about a footballer, really any athlete, but a footballer especially, your feet are so important. It's very hard to heal that kind of injury other than just simply being, resting at all times and not using your foot or using it to a minimal degree. So I don't think it's worth the risk. And in the press conference as well, he sort of indirectly said that Martin Odegaard is fit and available. Of course, we sort of knew this because he came off the bench with 3 minutes left against Inter Milan. And so, I would bet money on Martin Odegaard starting on Sunday against Chelsea. So with that being said, I think it is finally time that we see a midfield of Thomas Partey in the 6 with Declan Rice unavailable, Mikel Merino in the left 8. He did come off at halftime against Inter Milan because Mikel Arteta said he hadn't been feeling that well, but I do suspect that he'll be, back well, ready to start on Sunday. So Partey in the 6, Mikel Merino in the left 8, and then finally the return of Martin Odegaard as our right 8, next to Bukayo Saka at the right wing. And I think it's finally time that Leandro Trossard sees the bench again with Martinelli starting at the left wing. I talked in my last video about the fact that Leandro Trossard just is not a creative outlet and he hasn't really been able to fill the void that's been left by Odegaard. I made a post yesterday as well on Wenger's House that we can't overlook the void left by Riccardo Calafiori as well, because initially when Odegaard, was out through injury, Calafiori really stepped up and he made clear that he was as much of an offensive signing as he was a defensive signing. And he really added a dynamic to our attack, similar to what Zinchenko offered when we initially signed him, but with an added sense of physicality. Now, looking at the Shakhtar game, for example, even with Calafiori playing, you could see where we were starting to miss even more Martin Odegaard's creativity. Now, Ethan Nwaneri starting could have done a lot to help that, but he is 17. We've seen, just in him cramping after playing a large number of minutes, even against Preston, a championship side. It's not easy for a 17-year-old to be playing a full 90 minutes at this level, at the first team level. So we do have to be mindful of that. But regardless, without Calafiori, without Odegaard, without both of them, we've really struggled. But Odegaard being back is a huge, huge plus. And I think that we'll start to see more of Mikel Merino in terms of what Mikel Arteta signed him for, now that we'll have an out-and-out creative midfielder who's able to speed up our attack, and Mikel Merino can contribute to that somewhat, largely just by winning the ball high up the pitch and just winning our duels and speeding up the play by getting the ball to Martin Odegaard. And once Calafiori's back, I think that's when we're going to see Arsenal back at its quick, exciting best. So that's really all I wanted to discuss from the press conference. But now, looking at some of the comments left on the full-time post from the Inter game, I'm going to start with Skyward Focus, who said, I want to know whether Arteta has told White to not overlap anymore, because just passing the ball to Saka and expecting him to beat two men every time is just ridiculous. It's a good point, and I think it is worth noting that we haven't seen as much overlapping from Ben White to support Bukayo Saka. Now, I genuinely don't know why that may be. I think that, Martin Odegaard also not being there to support that dynamic has really hurt us in that fluidity from the right-hand side in general. But it is really frustrating because it is something that we've seen for a long time now. Bukayo Saka is consistently double or triple teamed, and what's helped in alleviating that or solving that has been Ben White, providing more of that presence. I genuinely struggle to understand why that is the case, why we haven't instructed Ben White to be doing that as much. Now, I don't have the numbers. Maybe it feels slightly exaggerated, but I don't think it's a secret that Bukayo Saka's effectiveness and his influence on games has, fallen off slightly in the last few matches. And you could say that that is in part because of Ben White's lack of overlapping. Now, when you look at the Newcastle game, right, Declan Rice could have scored at the death in stoppage time from a great Bukayo Saka cross. So had that gone in, maybe we wouldn't be as adamant about this situation. But I agree that it is frustrating, and hopefully that dynamic will be resolved soon. I can't help but think maybe there's also the element of, without Calafiori being at left back, him not being able to go forward as much. We want to be more solid defensively. No, you see, even when I say that, it doesn't make sense because Timber's a stronger defender than Calafiori. So if anything, that would give White more of a license to get forward. So, I agree with you. It has been a little bit frustrating. So we'll keep an eye on that, of course, on Sunday against Chelsea. Maxi AEC says, we played fantastic, but it's always going to be this way until we have an ambitious board who doesn't wait years to make important transfers, a board who want to win at all costs. We need good scouts to help us with talented players like Saliba, Martinelli for half the price. We need attacking players to sub on when having hard times like this, a natural striker, then good scout to get us under 30 million players worldwide. Until then, our almost will always want to kill a bed, but will never. I'm not sure exactly what that last bit means. But I understand the frustration. I did talk about this in the last video that Mikel Arteta has severely underspent when it comes to strengthening our attack. He's focused predominantly on our defense and after that, our midfield. But it's clear that Arteta is very stubborn about signing attackers unless it's the exact profile of player that he sees fitting for this squad. We almost signed, or we were interested in signing Sesko, for example, but he didn't give the green light. We weren't going to, pull the trigger there. There have been numerous examples of that. Nico Williams, apparently we were strongly interested in Nico Williams, but again, the green light wasn't there, so we didn't do it. So it's not like we haven't looked at attacking players, but it is also clear that, unless it's exactly who Arteta wants, he's not going to do it. And I respect that policy because, you don't want to be rash. You don't want to be impulsive. And then maybe someone who could, in theory, be a short-term solution then turns out not to be fitting for the long-term evolution and progression of the project. But you look at a signing like Raheem Sterling on loan, who's been used very sparingly, especially in moments where we need to come back and get back into a game. It's hard not to be annoyed by the situation, right? Because Sterling hasn't had much of an impact, and he hasn't really looked to be that convincing so far. So, it is definitely worth looking at the fact that Arteta is so hesitant to sign attackers. In terms of an ambitious board, I do think that we have an ambitious board. I think the last few summers since the Kroenkes took full ownership, we've consistently been one of the biggest spending teams in Europe, but maybe it has been a bit too defensive in terms of how we've approached building this team. And I have a strong feeling that next summer is going to be that summer. I've been saying, this whole summer, I said, I think Kai Havertz is the guy who can be our main striker. And then we'll just wait until next summer to make another big attacking signing. My player is Isak. I think Alexander Isak is the perfect player for Arsenal, and I would happily see us drop 90 million on him. But with Gabriel Jesus struggling in form, with with Eddie Nketiah leaving, although he didn't play so much, Raheem Sterling looking pretty underwhelming, Leandro Trossard just not as effective a player as a starter, and in this role where he's sort of a 10, not playing from the left wing while Martinelli starts, we do look short of options in attack. And so I fully feel this frustration, Maxi. And in terms of an ambitious board, I think that who we replace Edu Gaspar with will tell us a lot about how ambitious this board is. So we're going to see in the coming weeks what that decision tells us. And hopefully we do make that move. And tomorrow I'm going to make a video about who we could potentially sign as our new sporting director to replace Edu. But yes, it would be nice for us to, find some cheaper signings, smart signings, the likes of Saliba, who wasn't that cheap for an 18-year-old, mind you, or Martinelli, who, I think a signing like Martinelli is a very rare signing. We only signed him for 6 million from the 4th division in Brazil. Those types of signing are incredibly rare nowadays, but it would be nice to, make some smart signings. Next up is Reese. Reese says, commentary and punditry made it out to be a poor performance, but we outplayed Inter and the penalty was a farce. I genuinely think we played well, but just don't have the killer instinct in front of goal at the moment. Not worried yet. I agree with you, Reese. I think I was slightly harsh in my full-time post about Arsenal, but where that largely came from was what you mentioned here, is that killer instinct. And I find that really frustrating. And it's not just about when we're in front of goal. It's about that influence from the middle of the park where we're lacking that creative spark to even have a chance to be killers in front of goal, right? But yeah, Kai Havertz had that one chance, didn't finish it. I mentioned it already. Declan Rice against Newcastle right at the end. Couldn't take advantage. So I agree with you. We did, especially in the second half, we dominated Inter. And I don't have the XG handy right now, but almost all of their XG came from their penalty, which was a really unfair penalty, even if technically in, Champions League football, it is a penalty. Very unfortunate for us. And so all in all, with 2 days of hindsight and reflection, we did play really well against one of the best defensive sides in Europe. I think they haven't lost at home, at least in Europe, for 2 years, over 2 years. So, we definitely have something to be proud of there. But yes, we know by now that commentators, pundits, they're going to pile onto Arsenal no matter what. And so we just have to try our best not to get fazed by that or buy into it too much. We have to separate the emotional or bias punditry that we see from what the reality of the fact is. And the reality of the fact is we just have to continue playing the way we're playing largely, but obviously now that Odegaard's back, returning to what we've been known for much of the Arteta era, the last 2 years, and hope that we regain that creative spark that we've had. It's a bit of a long one here, but Troms Outdoors said, I'm not hysterical about this, but I'm frustrated because who exactly are we putting crosses into the box for? For Trossard? Because Havertz is in midfield and is too late to arrive. The false 9-10 hybrid setup with Havertz and Trossard just isn't working at all. They are both constantly slightly off the mark. Instead of having a dynamic, interchangeable false 9-10 duo, instead we have vacated both the left 8 position and the 9 position. We need to play Havertz as a true 9, and we need a proper number 8 to step into midfield. I agree completely with all of this. Starting first with the crosses, it did feel a little bit reminiscent of the beginning of the Mikel Arteta era. If you remember Kieran Tierney just spamming crosses over and over and over and to no avail. There was really no target man in the box for us. If Havertz was in that team back then yeah, it might have made a little bit more sense. But as you said here, right, Havertz is dropping in too deep to help out in midfield. So Trossard is not going to be winning these headers in the box. And so it is frustrating. And regardless, it wasn't just Trossard, right? Just we're playing crosses into the box in general. Timber, Martinelli, Saka, all of these guys playing these crosses into the box. And it just felt like it was a reflection of the lack of attacking thought, attacking creativity we have, right? And yeah, I sort of touched on this already with Trossard, but he's just not going to be that player that's sort of rotating around these half spaces, picking a pass where he's able to influence things in the way where he is on the left side, where he just pops up in the right spaces. He has that lucky bounce or the ball falls to him. And when he has to, he's an excellent finisher. So I agree that if we're going to use Havertz properly, the way that he has become one of the most efficient goal scorers in the calendar year of 2024, we have to keep him higher up the pitch. Absolutely. Now, in terms of having the proper number 8 to step into midfield, I think that will largely be solved by Martin Odegaard returning, obviously. I think, like I said, Mikel Merino's role will become a lot more clear and defined once Odegaard's back in the team. And Odegaard being one of the best creative midfielders in Europe, I think that will solve a lot on its own. And so I don't want to oversimplify things, but hopefully, right, once we have that player who's a natural creator back where he's at his best, it'll affect everything. It'll improve Saka's ability to find space and receive the ball in more promising positions. It'll help, hopefully Ben White or Jurrien Timber with overlapping more consistently. And even in terms of solving the left-hand side, right? I don't think that'll ever fully be solved until Calafiori's back. But even, Mikel Merino having Martin Odegaard as well, who he can rely on, I just hope that we'll have some more balance across the midfield and across our attack in general. So we'll see how that goes. Josh McCowan said, "We went to Inter dominated but couldn't create anything of meaning. I do not want to see Trossard anywhere near the first 11 against Chelsea." Yeah, this is just sort of reiterating things I've already said, but, once Martin Odegaard is back fit, which he should be on Sunday, I do think Leandro Trossard is dropped to the bench. And so I think, Josh, your wish will be granted, and we will probably be able to create more. My guy David said, Nwaneri did more with one turn than Trossard did all match. Although we didn't make enough clear-cut chances, we certainly made life difficult for Inter, and that's not easy to say, especially at their ground. Their relief at the final whistle says a lot. What's encouraging is that we have so much more to give. I think that's the most important thing, is that last line. It gets so easy to get caught up in the current form we're in that we lose perspective of how long the season is and how short we've been of all of our options. And so I think we need to keep that faith in the fact that once all of our players are back available, we are going to see the Arsenal that we've all come to know and love in recent years. And so, yeah, it does say a lot, right? That Inter, we've seen it numerous times, right? It's a sign of respect to us how much teams value a result against us nowadays. Back then it almost felt like a given, or it was a disappointment if they didn't get a result from us. But the standards have risen astronomically, and that is a great thing, and we can't lose sight of that blessing. But of course, with that comes the fact that we now have to grind out these results. So, like you said, we do have a lot more to give, and we just have to hope that as things return to normalcy, at least in terms of availability, we will see that translate into results. Will here said, honestly, I may be in the minority here, but I think we played pretty well against one of the best defensive sides in Europe at the San Siro. We created some solid chances, couldn't capitalize. However, this is an improvement from the Newcastle game for sure. Not really sure where change is needed, but perspective is just as important for the fans. Thank you, Will. It's a really good point because you do have to look at things in sequence. Of course, every game has its own context. The game state is different based on how an opponent sets up, what our side looks like, who's starting, who's available, etc., etc. But it's true, right? In sequence, we definitely stepped up from the Newcastle game. And I think Newcastle is just, I don't know, we seem to sort of stumble a bit at times. Of course, we handled them at the Emirates, but that's 2 years in a row now we've lost to them. And that'd be 3 losses in the last 4 years, if I'm correct, at St. James's Park. But huge improvement between Newcastle and Inter. And Inter is, of course, a much better side than Newcastle. And so, yeah, you have to hope that in sequence, we are going to be ready for Chelsea because we did look more at it. And with Martin Odegaard now back, I don't want to keep repeating myself. It goes without saying how helpful that's going to be. So let's just hope that this continues, this trend continues, and we continue to improve. And lastly, this was Karafiloski said, every team goes through a period like this. Let's not be a hysterical fan base for once and get behind the team in a proper way. Up the Gunners. That's it. You know, you said it perfectly, my friend. We have to stick by the team now more than ever. It's when things aren't pretty or easy or going in our favor that we have to be behind the team most. The season will not continue like this. And so it's just a matter of time until things click again. And you look at 2024, the second half of last season, we were flying. And, you know, there is the worry that if we don't figure things out quickly enough, it could be too little too late. But all of the pieces are there. And once they fall in place, we have every reason to believe that we are going to start looking like a really strong team again. And one of the best projects in Europe. We can't lose sight of that. As bad as things feel, that's still the reality of this team. So thank you for that comment, and that's why I pinned it, because we have to just stick through it. We have to stick with this team. So, as always, thank you for watching a bit of a longer video today. And moving forward, I'm going to continue to incorporate your thoughts on the Instagram page into my YouTube videos. But as the community on YouTube grows as well, please do feel free to leave comments directly on this video. So until next time, housemates, well, I'm going to post a video tomorrow about the sporting director conundrum, but feel free to get involved, like, comment, subscribe, turn on notifications. Thank you as always for watching. So until tomorrow, housemates, take it easy. Come on, you Gunners. Peace, everybody.